Welcome to another edition of Buck What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Buck What You Heard on Twitter. You follow me, I'll follow you back. And I finally got everything fixed. I think we're in business. I think we can roll through this here. And please everybody just bear with us. And as my co-host Michael Pless, how are you doing today, Michael?
Doing great, Gene. Friday. It's glad to be back.
Yep, there you go. And you know what? It's never a dull moment in Tampa. And we brought somebody on to talk about that never a dull moment. Ashley, how are you doing, Ashley?
I'm doing great. Like Michael said, it's Friday, so it's always a good day on it's Friday.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see. Michael, did we lose you? If so, we'll get him back on here just momentarily. Hey, thank you for finally being on. Thank you for being so patient. I know we weren't sure if you were going to be on tonight, with your schedule and everything. But again, thank you for being on. And we'll be able to talk some football here. I just want to make sure everybody can everybody hear us out here? Okay. And Tommy Travis, how you doing? I just want to make sure everything's working. And I'm going to get you back on here again, real soon, just to kind of keep talking football. But see if we can get Pless back on here momentarily. Cool. So we can okay. Sound is good. So Ashley, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what are you doing right now? Are you writing or what do you have going on right now?
Right now I'm writing for all things Tampa Bay Bucs. Those are my guys and my girls out there. And we just actually started a partnership with Bucs Live News. That's primarily on Facebook. So we've just been, trying to expand ourselves and really get things going. So yeah, right now that's what we're doing. But it's going to be a slow season coming up. Obviously, with the offseason, it's going to be a lot of draft research, a lot of taking the next step in the writing and everything like that. So I'm excited for it. It just sucks you have to wait another 8 months to really write a whole bunch about it.
Yeah, that's the worst part about it is the waiting, is the me personally, I would say over the past 3 seasons, I've kind of taken a step back, put my emotions in check and just, kind of waiting. Let's see what the general manager does. Let's see how he handles things, that kind of thing. And, it's kind of frustrating when you think about, a lot of the moves that are made and you have to listen to some of the fans and they're impatient. They want things to happen. And I don't know. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. What are for you? What are the things that you try to focus on in the off season?
In the offseason, it's definitely free agency in the draft. Like I said, you want to bring the solid guys back. You want to bring the Adam Humphries back. You want to bring the Carl Nassers back, even though he signed through 2019. Me personally, I want to bring Peyton Barber back. Like, I think he just needs an offensive line and he'll be solid. I mean, the guy had over 870 yards. You don't do that because you're a bad back. You do that because you have an offensive line that hits you, in the backfield, and then you have to fight for every yard. You saw him dragged by the coattails 2-3 defenders at a couple times. Also in the offseason, you look at the free agents that could be also picked up by your team, the Landon Collins, the Brashad Breeland, the defensive side as well. You have Ansah, who's a Lion right now. You just look at different ways and different things that could, either boast your team, people that could be let go, contracts to be negotiated. It's really almost a reflecting time, as a writer and as someone who, talks Buccaneers football. It's kind of like almost not a relief, but almost like a time where you can settle down and just, pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I like, there's some really good prospects out there. I think Jason Light is going to be able to manage the salary cap to where you can get some players in and you can re-sign some players that would be key to this team. We've, me and a friend of mine, Peter Blake, always call Adam Humphries the Lazarus man. because year after year, people are trying to run him out of Tampa. And again, he plays and plays and puts himself in a position to succeed. And he's always a big part of the offense. I mean, him and Jameis Winston, they work well together. So that's one of those things that, here's a guy that, on the stat line, it may not be big, but he makes plays when they count. So he's definitely somebody you would want to bring in there. I would be disappointed if he ended up going somewhere else. And what would really bother me is if it was an NFC South player. So I don't know. That's kind of how I look at it. He's one of those guys. I'd love to have him. That's him. And, like you said, Carl Nassib, I would like to lock him up long-term, just the way he's been playing. Guys, you have to agree with me here. This defensive line, you haven't seen people getting at the quarterback like that for a long, long time. And it was really refreshing to see him and JPP playing as billed with that third-round pick that Jason Light gave up to get him. It's really exciting to see that guy coming in here. So I'm excited. I'm really interested to see how this offseason is going to play out. A lot of chatter in the chat here. Somebody was talking about Greedy Williams. Yeah, that's my guy, but we'll have to see what happens with the draft. There's we still don't know who the head coach is. So, that's a big part of it as well. So I wanted to, you wrote an article earlier this week, and I kind of wanted to touch on that. If you could kind of let the listeners know what that article was about and just kind of touch on it a little bit for me.
It was kind of just my thought on the draft process. As far as, if I was the general manager, obviously I'm not. Like I said, all my articles are basically, they're just opinions. And some people don't like that opinion, and that's okay. But at the same time, it's just looking for one person's point of view. There's a million different ways it can go down. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But realistically, I've heard a lot about Greedy Williams, and I've seen a lot of, we want him in Tampa. We need a safety, blah, 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 blah. And we do, the secondary isn't the sharpest. They're not the most well-groomed right now because they're really a bunch of rookies and a bunch of second years. But they're a solid group of rookies and second years. Jordan Whitehead's been good in the safety position. Justin Evans, before he got hurt, has been a baller. Carlton Davis. MJ Stewart's a bit of a question mark for me, but, he just has to take the time to, evolve his. And Greedy Williams would be, a good plug-in guy to back up, to replace Brent Grimes. But at the same time, the offensive line might have 3 holes in it. You can't pick up. There's not a lot of offensive linemen that you can pick up on free agency. It just doesn't happen very often. To get Ryan Jensen was like a blessing in disguise, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And but again, when you look at this offensive line and you look at some of the liabilities that you saw, there were a lot of plays that could have worked had the offensive line been correctly addressed. And
80% of them.
I think the biggest one to me is Caleb Benenoch. When I look at Caleb Benenoch, here's a guy who's a 5th round pick, and that's what he is. Nothing more, nothing less. He's a 5th round pick. So at the end of the day, I've pretty much lowered my expectations of him. I kind of wonder, and again, I'm not a coach, but why don't you put Kappa out there? Kappa's a rookie. Trial by fire. It couldn't have been any worse than what we saw with Caleb Benenoch. So I don't know. There are just things that happen.
That raises the question as well. Is Kappa that bad? Is he that bad at the position? This was like a big misfire, drafting another, D3 player? Ali Marpet has been one of the best offensive linemen in the league for years now. You haven't heard his name much at all this season because of how good he's been, and that's a great thing. But sometimes Division III players don't always work out.
Yeah.
And if this was one of those players, why keep him on the roster? Why don't you cut him and put somebody else in?
Yep. That's true. Buccaneer Bruce said Caleb is a right tackle, not a guard. Yeah, guards are like gold, man. I mean, it just they're just hard to come by. And when you get them, you try to take care of them. Again, this is one of those things. There's that deficiency on the offensive line. But I would love to see, and Buccaneer Bruce brings up a great point. Warhop is the worst offensive line coach in the NFL. He's got to be up there, if not the worst. I mean, just what they've done, the offensive line should have progressed a lot more than what it did. And we've seen proof of that. So whoever the next head coach that comes in, he's really going to have to get out. He's going to have to put together a staff, and they're going to have to do a lot of changing of the culture. And we talked about this just for the past couple of years. Culture change, and it's been very frustrating for fans. I'm sure it's frustrating for players as well. I wanted to get your take on it. I mean, when you see all of the stories that are coming out of One Buck, you have to get that right coach in there to help right the ship and get things straight.
It's definite. The Bucs really haven't had a great coach, and I don't want to bring up his name because of what he's done with the Raiders, but since John Gruden. The only other coach that's had a 10-win season since him is Raheem Morris. Right. He's not even in the NFL right now. The Bucs have had Greg Schiano, and we know what dumpster fire that was. The Bucs have had Dirk Carter. We know what dumpster fire that was. And, now we're starting from the ground up again. These players have been going through a turntable of coaches and linemen and position coaches and players. There's just such a high turnover. You can't have success in a franchise when you have that high of a turnover. And everyone's been saying, oh, you have Chris Richard, and you have the enemy, and you have Bruce Arians. It comes down to the coaches you're going to have supporting them. One head coach cannot make every decision. You have to have the right O-line coach. You have to have the right running back coach. Like the running back coach, the offensive line coach, both need to go, in my opinion. They've both been horrible. Buckner should stay. Duffner should also stay. And the wide receiver coaches should also stay. But everyone else should be let go. At this point, there has to be a question inside of One Buck. Who is letting all of these things slip by? Who is letting mediocrity and just plain, just terrible coaching and decision making happen? Who's letting it just, be pushed aside like nothing?
Well, you have to consider the way that these coaches have been brought into Tampa. This is the first season that I can think of that they've actually had a coaching search process. That you have this guy, you bring this guy in, you interview all these different guys that are potential head coaches, and then you make your decision. Everything that the Bucs have done, going all the way back to after they fired Tony Dungy, has been a reaction to a different situation. And I've brought this up, a bunch of times. Basically, when you look at how John Gruden came in, had Bill Parcells gone ahead and signed that, there's your head coach right there. It wouldn't have been John Gruden. It would have been a Bill Parcells. There was another thing that I heard that Marvin Lewis could have possibly been the head coach here in Tampa, but they were overturned, and they went ahead and got John Gruden and brought him in. We've just seen all these things that have happened after Rich McKay left. And then you've got Bruce Allen, who is got to be the biggest idiot I've ever seen. Well, next to Michael Lombardi, but that's for another time. But just as these things have happened, they haven't stopped. They haven't made a hard stop and said, hey, let's fix this. Let's do the process right. Let's get that right head coach in there. So I'm really happy with the way they've gone about doing this because they're looking at every option. They don't have their mindset on one guy, and they rush a few guys through here, but that's just it. So I'm good with that, and I'm really, I'm excited about the coaching process, and let's see what happens from there. let's see, what was I going to say? Let me, if you would, Pless is still trying to get his computer back up and running. Man, it's just been 2019 has been the year of bad computer problems. So we'll get him back on here. Slay 509, what's going on? Longtime fan, first time chatter. Thank you. I appreciate you joining in here. What do you want to see the Bucs do? What if you're the GM, you're GM Ashley right now? Take your writer hat off, put your GM Ashley hat on. How do you fix this team? Because and to be honest, and I'm not saying this just because I like the general manager. I like, where things are going. And he hasn't been perfect and been flawless, but he's put some talent on this team compared to what he had when they first came in. So how do you fix this team? How do you avoid another 5-win season?
It has to start with the coach, like you said. You have to bring the right guy in. And I think they've done a great job of having a bunch of different guys from a bunch of different backgrounds, a bunch of different positions and teams and areas come in to interview.
Right.
The next step in the process is you as a general manager have to talk to your players. You can't be a successful general manager if you don't talk to your players and ask them what's going on. Because you can sit there and be a GM all you want, but you're not going to be in the locker room every second with these players. You're not in the meetings. You're not on the field with them. You're doing your own stuff. So if I was Jason Light, I would sit down with the players, each either individually as a group, in sections, by positions or, whatever, and ask them, what can we do? The leaders of this team, like JPP, Mike Evans, Levante David, Jameis Winston, you sit down with those leaders and you ask them, what can we do for you to make this work? What can we do to make this better? And the biggest thing is you have to evaluate your players. You have to develop your players in a way that will benefit them and the team. You can't just, throw a rookie in. Like a good situation of that would be the Ronald Jones dilemma. Ronald Jones had 23 carries on the entire year, and that's less than one whole game's worth of work. Right. And everyone's calling him a bust. He doesn't know what he's doing. Okay, well, the guy was also thrown in on like a 2nd and 18 and throwing a pass well behind the line of scrimmage and asked to go get yards. And when he doesn't, everyone, labels him a bust and gives him shit about it.
Yeah.
You have to bring in the right coach. You have to talk to your players. You have to communicate. Communication is the biggest key in any kind of relationship, whether it be, in a job, in a relationship, in anything you do, communication is key. And I think the biggest problem in Tampa right now is there's no communication between anybody. It's just, you've seen it in the secondary, there's no communication. You see it on the offense, there's no communication. The Glazers with Dirk and the GM, there's just no communication. That's the biggest thing right now. And then you have to bring in these players in free agency that will help your team. You have to draft the right players as well. Now, I think Jason Light did a great thing bringing JPP in the trade, and that was probably the best move I've seen by the Bucs in years. Let me ask you
this: what is your opinion of what Vita Vea did? I know the beginning of the season was kind of a letdown for a lot of people, but where he's at right now in his progress, what is your opinion of how they did bringing him in?
I think Vita Vea has definitely been the most impressive Buck this season, which is a big thing to say. And I'm not taking any credit to anybody else. Probably the most impressive rookie this season. Him and Justin Evans, Jordan Whitehead and Carson Davis would be a close second. But Vita Vea has started from someone who couldn't get off blocks, couldn't push anybody with his size or his strength, and has really manhandled all pro linemen. Like, we're not talking just Pro Bowl, all pro linemen who have had years and years of experience have pounds on this man, have just, and he's just blowing them off the ball. He had more tackles than Gerald McCoy this year. He had 3 sacks. I mean, he should have had 5 or 6 different sacks. Yeah. He should have, he really is going to be something special for this team. And everyone can argue about the Derwin James thing, but you can throw Derwin James into the secondary that we had at the beginning of the year with Mike Smith, and he wouldn't have performed like he did in Los Angeles. He wouldn't have. You can't throw a great player into a shitty scheme and expect him to be a great player.
Yeah, it's very.
You know
true.
what I mean? And I'm not saying Derwin James isn't a great player, because he is. He's fantastic. He's probably going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. But at the same time, you just don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
So Vita Vea is probably going to get compared to Derwin James all of his career, and it sucks because that's the wrong mentality to have.
Yeah, I'm happy with who we have. To be honest, with who the Bucs have. I'm looking long term at this. The defensive tackle position is important. Getting pressure on the quarterback is important. We've seen when the scheme is working like it should, getting pressure on the quarterback in the back end of the season has really helped the Bucs to kind of slow down some of these quarterbacks. So I think that's important. Plus, what's up, man?
What's going on? Glad to be back once again, because computers just, they suck overall.
I know, right? Yeah.
But, I mean, what did I miss? It seems like you guys were nailing it right there. So,
well, I've got somebody counts 0860 says Derwin James. Derwin James, stop the blasphemy. Bro, I'm sorry, but you don't build a team from the back to the front. You just don't. And there's no, if you're not getting pressure on the quarterback, I don't care what kind of safety you are. If you don't have that front line, you can't protect anybody. You can't, it's just not there. You look at the scheme that San Diego has. San Diego has a good scheme, and they have a good defensive lineman, and they get pressure on the quarterback. That's what makes that whole thing work. And the play calling as well. You have a competent head coach there, and that makes a big difference compared to what you were having here.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at rookies, a lot of people, think, they obviously want their guy that they targeted. They want, you want the player that you looked at the most, and whoever you think is your favorite, that's who you want, obviously. But, but I look at it this way, you can do 2020 all you want, but, Alvin Kamara, for instance, if we would have taken Alvin Kamara, would he be the player that he is today? We don't know. We just don't know that. We can't assume that he's going to be the same guy that he is for the Saints that he is for us. Same thing with Derwin James. If Derwin James was here, we don't know, how he would have done. Would he be the type of impact player that he is for the Chargers? No idea. He's at the perfect spot where he was meant to be. He's in the perfect scheme for his skill set that allows him to be successful. Now, as far as Vita Vea goes, I mean, the guy's a monster. That's a guy who I pounded the table for. My partner, Mark Ramirez, he pounded the table for. He's a guy that we scouted heavily. I think he's going to be one of the top players in this league. I compare him to Haloti Nagata, and I think he's on pace to be something like that, maybe even more special because of his raw athleticism, a guy that's only played 4 years of football. A lot of people forget he's only played 4 years of football, really, if you think about it. He was a running back at first, not a defensive tackle. Mm-hmm. So the guy, I mean, he's still learning, and he's got a long way to go, but I think he's going to get there. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Vita Vea, Warren Sapp, and Gerald McCoy all had 3 sacks their rookie season. And I think Warren Sapp retweeted something that I had retweeted. And he said, I had the same numbers as Gerald McCoy and Vita Vea. He said, are we looking at somebody special? So I don't know. I'm excited to see what he does. There were players that Tampa didn't get that they could have gotten. And, I'm cool with that. They've gone to other teams. I don't worry about what they're doing now. And that's kind of my viewpoint on this. I like who we have. And, I'm not just saying that because there are other players that we could have got, but, I'm happy with where he's at. I hate the injury. The injury that he got, really set him back because you consider no preseason. What did he miss? 5 games in the regular season?
Something like that.
I think he missed 5 games in the
the guy didn't have any training camp, no preseason, came in the 4th week of the season against Chicago and really didn't start playing well until I would say that San Francisco game was kind of his breakout game. And, once he started getting more snaps, he got more comfortable. All those things play into part. And now you go into an off season where, I think they could really build around this guy. The question, it's really just about him finding what it takes, as far as his hand usage and all those things, and realizing he's got the talent to be something. It's just about putting it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, and I want to kind of get back, because I didn't get your thoughts on this, but kind of getting back to the offense. We were talking a little bit about the offensive line while you were out, and I just want to kind of get your thoughts. How do you fix that? I mean, is there a way to really fix that offensive line?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But let me say this: the offense as a whole wasn't good enough this year. And I know a lot of people say it was a top 10 offense, all this and all that, yards and all that nonsense. You know what? It doesn't matter. They just weren't good enough, and that's plain and simple. And that's probably why Dirk Cutter's not here anymore. His specialty was offense, and it just wasn't good enough throughout his tenure. If you really break it down and look at it, the offense has to be better. Especially in that last half of the season, they only averaged 20 points per game, which isn't good enough, especially with the skill set that you guys, that they're putting out there. It wasn't good enough. And that starts up front, obviously. Offensive line couldn't block, couldn't, set the run game up. There was not a commitment to the run game. Let me say that. As far as your overall play calling was inconsistent. Just everything was inconsistent for the offense. Red zone, turnovers, all the above. You had quarterback issues as far as who to play, and Fitzpatrick and Jameis, and it was just a big mess pretty much offensively. I didn't see it as top 10 offense. I didn't buy that talk of well, they're a top 10 offense, they're this and that. No, you're not. You're not good enough. When the game mattered, the offense was not good enough, and that's plain
they
and simple.
stalled quite a few times.
Yeah. But yeah,
I think the offensive line has a lot to do with that, though. And I think the play calling was also just atrocious inside the red zone.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's something that they have to address. And I think that is priority number one going into the offseason is the offensive line.
And the running game. Like, I think I've tweeted this about 6,000 times already. But Peyton Barber, you can't have a successful running game if you only run one guy 14 times a game. That's like running back number 2 or even 3 like carries. You can't get anything consistently going. You're gonna get 1, 2, maybe 5 yards of carry when you do that like that. It's just why shy away from it? Even when we were up 17-0 against the Falcons, he just ran away with it. He only had, I think, 15 or 16 carries. Why did you stop? Averaging 4.4 yards a game, and you just stopped giving him the football makes absolutely no sense. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, how many games can we go back and look at it and look at Peyton Barber's numbers where he has, 13 to 15 carries, he has about 70 yards, and you're like, why do we not keep using him? It's mind-boggling, to be honest. You look at the top running backs in this league, a lot of them can get over 20 carries where, they're getting a 125, 130 a game because they're getting fed, they're getting the carries. And especially with Peyton Barber, he's a guy that gets better as the game goes on. He reminds me a lot of, kind of similar to like an Ernest Graham, a Cadillac Williams. He's like those guys where you feed them, they're going to get better once they get into the fourth quarter. It just made no sense. I mean, and that's pretty much the offense. I mean, it didn't make sense as the year went on.
Yeah.
I think I put something together the other day. I was looking at his stats on the season, and I think it was whenever he averaged, I think 18 or 16 to 19 carries, he had 85 yards on the ground, and he was averaging well over 4 yards a carry every single game. He had like 16 to 19 carries. He was putting up the numbers. It wasn't just, he can't run the ball, we need a true running back number 1. You don't. What you need is a real offensive lineman full of starters, not third and fourth stringers.
Yep. I agree.
Again, that's been the issue for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a long time is depth. They have because you miss on so many draft picks, so many free agents for over a decade, and it's hard to build a team. And and have any kind of depth when you have that many misses. And we've seen that from one general manager to another to another. And it's just hard. And when you get somebody that's halfway decent in there, it's hard to get those players out there and have a fully, and have a realistic team. I look at the linebacker core as soon as Quan went down, as soon as some of your Kendall Beckwith didn't come in, and you look at that linebacker core again, and you're like, wow, well, who do you really have? So it's been tough, over the years because of all the misses, and you can see where the glaring holes are because of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you look at it going into this offseason, offensive line, you're definitely going to have to add a couple tackles. You're going to have to add a guard. You're going to need some guys. I would say 4 to 5 guys that you're going to have to bring in, whether it be draft or free agency. And you got to really figure out what you have now on the roster and what, what you could potentially add. And you got to make this a top 10 unit. It has to be. You got to help Jameis out. And he can't be getting hit like he has, throughout his career. I think he had over 100 quarterback hits this year. I mean, that just can't happen. They gotta set him up better. And, first way of doing that is running the football. And that's something that needs to be a priority.
Yeah. Well, guys, I got, and, we're talking about the offensive line. We're talking about the offense. And I think we may have talked about this a little bit earlier or off camera. But I keep hearing Le'Veon Bell's name mentioned, and I've heard Leonard Fournette's name mentioned as well. And I just want to put. I'm
exactly my reaction.
I do want to address that. Le'Veon Bell set out for the Pittsburgh Steelers because he wants a max contract. If you look at the money that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, if you look at the holes that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers need to fill, there's no way that you could bring in a Le'Veon Bell wanting a max contract and expect to sign him. He set out for a reason because he wants big money, and he's going to go wherever the big money is. And I just don't see that place as being Tampa because of all the other issues. I wouldn't say issues, but needs that need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I would definitely call them issues. There's real offensive line issues. And like you said, Le'Veon Bell is not going to take $14-15 million a year. Why are you going to spend upwards of $16, $17, $18+ million on a running back who sat out all year because he wasn't getting paid enough? That means anytime he now has the option, anytime he doesn't feel happy, to pull a Brent Grimes. He can pull a Djax where he just doesn't want to play. Why not use that money and go sign a cornerback like you should have in last year's free agency? Use that money and pick up Landon Collins. Use that money and pick up another tackle. Use that money and take another wide receiver if you want to. I don't care, but you don't need to bring him in. Everyone's going to say he's a playmaker, he's a game changer, and that's true, but not for that kind of money. The Bucs just don't have it. You can't
he's not
bring
going
back
for the
your
homie
guys
hookup
that are essential key parts of this team and have him as well.
Yeah.
And try to upgrade this team in all the areas that it really needs, which are going to be defensive end if Gerald McCoy is gone. It's going to be cornerback with Brent Grimes gone. And the big question mark now on MJ Stewart, if he's even going to be in the secondary, or if he's going to be strictly on special teams like he's been the last 3 games. And, as well as safety depth as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just everything's too big of a question mark to try and just make that splash signing and waste all of your cap space on one player who's probably not even in football shape at the moment. And if he is, he still hasn't been in the game for an entire year.
Yeah. And the one thing that I've seen from a lot of players that hold out, they're kind of injury prone. And you do see a lot of players that, I mean, especially with, you look historically at the players that have held out for the Tampa Bay Bucs, shortly thereafter, there's some kind of injury or something like that happened. So it is what it is. Again, too many holes to fill, as Ron Allen mentions. There's a lot of things that you can do. And I'm going to ask you guys this: is Quan Alexander, is he somebody that is he a focal point of getting re-signed? Getting to see a glimpse of him under Duffner's defense he looked a lot better than he did, a little bit more disciplined than what we saw under Mike Smith's defense. So is this a guy you want to bring back into Tampa?
Absolutely. 100%. Only because if you look at the way Quan and Levante work together, they're a top linebacker core in the NFL. There's a lot of missed tackles that Quan needs to clean up on, and the amount of money he's asking, he wouldn't get from Tampa Bay. But if the Bucs can work something out with him, I think you bring him back. Kendall Beckwith, it was hurt this season, and he really hasn't had a chance to show what he's had. Kevin Minter did a good job, but Darius Clayton did a pretty decent job. It's just, I don't see why the Bucs would let someone, who averaged, I think, 12 tackles in the game in the first half before he went down with the injury. He has the talent and he has the aggressiveness that you need to be a linebacker. I just think in this new scheme with a new coach, he'd do a lot better. I think everybody on that secondary, on that defense in general, didn't play well under Mike Smith. So is it him not having the talent or not, getting his tackles, or was it the scheme? I think that's a big question mark as to, is he good enough to be on this team? As well as the fact that now he's going to be coming off a major injury. An ACL isn't something you easily come back from. So will he get the 10+ mil he wants? No, not from the Bucs. But if he really wants to be in Peter and Red, he'll sign that deal. And, he knows what he has on the team as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think he'll be back. I don't think Jason Light will let him go.
Yeah, I would hope not. I mean, I think that he would be a big part of this defense. And guys, that there are just so many players that were injured that were expected to be key pieces to this team. And we're going to get to see some of these guys back, like a Vernon Hargraves. And it's hard to believe that how often he was trashed, for ending up being that nickel player, playing in that nickel position. But he was good at it. He was actually good at it. I know at the time the draft pick wasn't, in my opinion, wasn't a good idea, but he's here and this is your guy. And I think that I want to see how much he's improved, and hopefully he can come back from that injury and kind of show that. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat here.
You're good.
Yeah, Buccaneer Bruce said Quan should be a 1-year friendly deal. Let's see. Oh, they were talking about Fournette. Fournette, he kind of scares me with the number of injuries he's had. That would be my only concern. He just can't seem to stay healthy, and that would just frustrate me if you bring in a Fournette and then he's out for 4 or 5 games in the middle of the season when he's really needed. So not real sure. I mean, you've seen him in playing, and you know what he can do when he's healthy. But at the same time, you worry about these injuries. And we can tell you, just based on all the players that have come through, how much injury really affects a team when you bring a free agent in like that and they're not able to help the team to win.
Yeah, pass on the running backs there. Le'Veon Bell's not coming here, and same thing with Fournette. The best way to get a running back is through the draft, and I think the Bucs will, if they have a guy that they like, I think they'll pull the trigger on that in the draft. I mean, you look at all the guys that, have come out, over the last couple of years, 3rd, 4th round, 5th round, undrafted. Peyton Barber, for example, undrafted. You can find running backs. That's not going to be an issue. I think they'll continue to find someone that can complement Peyton Barber. Same thing with Ronald Jones. I think they'll look at it, not really counting on Ronald Jones this year and really, take another running back. And if Ronald Jones comes out and breaks out, then you're good to go. You have 3 solid running backs that can come in and do the job. So I think that's where they'll head in that direction. I don't expect them to, like Ashley said earlier, spend $17 million on Le'Veon Bell, where that will just be another Darrelle Revis case where he's just asking for more money every year.
Yeah. Marlon Williams was asking, what do you guys think about Sean Wilson? Is he somebody that can get playing time as he progresses? I know he was put on injured reserve. Do you think that we'll see him back and possibly fighting for a roster spot?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. And I only don't know because they've had an opportunity to use him, but I think I see
coaching,
Bobo
though.
Wilson taking on a bigger role now instead of Sean Wilson. I mean, Bobo could be the replacement for Djax as the speed guy. I didn't know how fast Bobo was until that last game, and I saw him take a couple, that get off from the line, and I was like, wow, he's got some speed. But
Yeah.
Sean Wilson, I thought, would be more the return guy, and then we saw Bobo Wilson back there, which I'm very grateful that we stopped putting, Rodgers back there because he wasn't doing anything. That never made sense to me. Why would you put one of the slowest backs you have returning kicks? But I think Sean Wilson has the talent and definitely the speed to be a big part of this offense. I just don't know if he'll be used correctly. He didn't have a lot of opportunities, so I think we'd have to see more from him maybe in the preseason of this upcoming year to see what he can really do. Maybe have him and Rojo take over, maybe a whole game's worth of reps, maybe the first preseason game. You usually have most of your rookies out anyway.
Yeah, I really expected to see
but as
Rojo
far as
in
him
there.
having the starting role, no.
Yeah. I really expected to see Rojo in the last game of the season. Just put him out there and let him start, and let's see what you have. I mean, they haven't really put him in a position where he can really show what he can do. I mean, every time he gets the ball, it's in the backfield, and they're not opening up any holes for him, and they're not giving him an opportunity to really run. So I don't think we've seen the best of Rojo at all. I'm hoping that we get to see more of him next year, and they find a way to utilize him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I'll say one thing. I think, the main thing is you got to look at this roster and you got to take a different approach to it, because a lot of these guys that are on the roster wasn't used correctly with this coaching staff because of their stubbornness. So I think that plays a factor into it. So I would expect Jason Light to bring, if he can, a majority of the roster and really see what they have with a new staff in place and a staff that understands how to use their players in the best fit. And that's why I think like a Sean Wilson, I would definitely bring him back just for training camp purposes, preseason and really see what he could do. And, who knows? Same thing with Ronald Jones. I mean, all those guys, Alex Kappa, they're all going to be, question marks, but that's actually a good thing because you really don't know what they can do because they weren't utilized.
Right. So, here we are, clean slate, and we're going into the regular season or going into the off season. So a lot of things are going to happen, folks. I encourage you. I'm begging you, please just kind of sit back and let's see what happens. I know that a lot of people are pounding the table. They want this guy. They want their guy to come in, and let's see what they put together. This is Jason Light. This is a prove it season for him. He has to hit. He has to produce. Basically, he has to bring that coach out there. And this team has to do better than 5 wins. 5 wins is not acceptable. They have to show market improvement. It just has to happen. There's a lot of time and energy that the Bucs have invested in through Jason Light getting these players out there. I want to see what they do. And at the end of the day, there's not a lot we can do as fans, but just kind of sit back and watch. But last year, everybody was pretty much upset because this guy didn't get picked or this guy. And, we've seen how those free agent moves have kind of shaken out in this year. And I think Miami, who was the guy from the defensive end from Miami that came from the Rams that everybody was flipping out about because Robert Quinn. That's it. And he just got cut. So
sign him right now. Bring him in. Why not?
He's expected to be cut.
So. Yeah, he's expected to be cut. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. You just kind of have to let things shake out, and you don't have to go out and get splash plays. You can get quality players. You look at what the Bucs got JPP closer to the draft, and they got him for a 3rd round pick, and what he's done in returns has really put himself in a good position. So there are moves to be made. I don't think Jason Light is quite done yet. I think that you will see some other moves from him. Another question. Brandon was asking, do you think the Bucs hire a president of football operations? It's a good idea, but I kind of doubt it. I don't know. Maybe if things don't work out, I could possibly see it, but no. Right now, no. I think they're gonna roll the way they're going right now. What do you guys think?
I don't see it right now. I think it's, if that was the case, I think it would already be done by now, and they would have, probably put the decision making in that guy's hands and allow him to, find the GM or head coach or vice versa, whatever. I don't see it as a part of the plan.
Yeah, most definitely. And Robert,
I think it would be a great idea, but I don't think in my opinion, I think if the Bucs brought in someone who used to be a player as a president, that would be amazing. Like, that's someone who's been on the turf in a Bucs uniform, that knows what it's like to win games as a Buc, knows what it's like to lose games as a Buc, knows what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
But I agree. I don't think it's going to happen.
I think it would be good because I think you need a buffer between ownership and what goes on the player level, whether it's the player management level on down in the coaching and player personnel. I think ownership they're owners. Do your thing. Let your you let your GM, you let your president of football operations handle things from there, and you just kind of look at it from a distance. But again, I don't know what's going to happen. I think they should focus more on Manchester United and just let the football people do what they do. Let's see. Just going through the draft here, or the chat. Shooter and Stash. 5th pick of the draft. Are you going offense or defense?
That would depend on what the first 4 picks were. I mean, if it's a heavy offensive line or offensive sided draft, then defense. But I do think we'll see more of a defense heavy draft, because I think they'll sign an offensive free agent in free agency, and then I think it's either going to be Jonah Williams or it's going to be Greedy Williams. One of the Williams will be in a Bucs uniform. That you can bet yourself on. So if you want to buy a jersey and get a custom one that says Williams on the back,
let me write this down. Getting my trusty pen out and writing this down. And Ashley said
that you can book it.
I'm booking it right
in 4 months and say Ashley will have picked one of the Williams to be in a Bucs uniform with the 5th or the 7th or the 10th pick if they decide to move back.
Got it. I've got you here. We'll definitely be talking about that closer to the draft. But again, what you just kind of have to be patient right now with everything that's going on with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially the coaching process. I don't have a favorite, as far as who's going to be the head coach in Tampa. But it's better to see them going through the process, like I mentioned earlier, than what we've seen, here over the past decade, how they've gone about getting coaches. So, it's kind of sit back and let's
Bruce
see what
Arians.
Bruce Arians.
No risk it, no biscuit. No risk it, no biscuit. Yeah.
There you go.
So
you can put everything I say on a recorded line and write it down, and I'm betting that it'll be true. It has to be true, or else I'm probably going to be well said.
Yeah, Tommy Travis said LSU players have been good to us, and
for sure.
That's been pretty accurate right there, to be honest. I'm hoping that everything. Go ahead.
Gene, I'll say this. I love Jonah Williams. I think if he's available at 5, I think he's a good lock. Ed Oliver's another name. I think you got to look at either him or Jonah. But I love Greedy Williams as well. And then you have to look at Brian Murphy too from Washington. So any of those 4, I think is a good bet. But if it was me, I would take Jonah hands down. I just think he's the most complete player right now as far as consistency. He's what we need. Left tackle, put him at right tackle, either or. he's an instant starter.
And that's
you know
kind of
who's
what
really
you're looking
grown
for.
on me as a player who I would love to see on the defensive line. And like I know it's a pipe dream because he's just that good that he'll probably go before number 5 is Josh Allen. And I didn't really see anything on him until the Kentucky game where they they beat I think it was who did they play? Penn State?
Yes.
Yeah, Penn State. And my God, that man can play football. He can get after it. And I mean, obviously I know he's probably going to be gone before 5. And so will Jonah Williams more than likely. That's why I think it'll either be Greedy or, like you said, Murphy. He's also a very good corner. He's arguably almost as good as Greedy, if not better.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if Jonah, Allen, and Greedy were all there at number 5, the Bucs would have to take Jonah. With as many holes as the offensive line has, that's what you need. Even as tempting as the other players are, you do the same thing you did with the last draft with OJ. You take the best player on the board, and that would be Jonah in that scenario.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you guys. It is possible that the Bucs trade down and pick up a couple more picks. So you have to look at all the teams that are hurting at the quarterback position, and we'll have to kind of see what happens. But you kind of have to factor in John Gruden because he's got like 89 picks in the first round, and so he can make it a bad day for everybody, just based on how everything's lining up. So
he's got Mayock. Mayock's going to help him out.
Oh God!
The Giants have 10 picks too, and that's why I think they'll move back in the draft is because the Giants need a quarterback. Eli cannot make another season run. He just can't. So the Bucs move back with the Giants, pick up another 2 picks, and move back 2 spots. Yeah. That would be the most common sense for both teams. The Giants get their quarterback, the Bucs get an extra 2 picks, and they still get a top 10 draft pick. That would be the best case scenario for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that happening. But again, we don't know what Jason Light has planned. He worked some magic in the draft last year, so we'll see what happens here. And
I mean, long way to go till the draft. We still got to figure out who our coach is going to be, and that's going to decide a lot of it. As far as who you have as a staff, who they like as players, what kind of schemes are they going to be running. So a lot of things could be changing. Are we going to be playing a 3-4, 4-3 defense, vice versa? Multiple defense. So a lot of things could happen. Yeah,
absolutely. You're right about that. That there's that reality check right there. Yeah, most definitely.
Hey, that's why I'm the GM.
That's right, man. So, so again, man, it's just a matter of let's see what happens with the head coach. But it's just interesting how this draft is gonna kind of lined up. Where the Bucs have the number 5 pick. So still. A lot of things that can happen between now
I like this draft class. I think it's a very good draft class for what the Bucs need.
Very balanced draft class.
Yeah, it's a very good defensive draft, which is good for us. I think it has a lot of depth at the corner position, defensive line, offensive line. I think that's where they want to attack, and I think there's some good, good running backs, some good skill position players if they want to go that way. But I mean, as far as our needs go, I think it lines up pretty well.
All right, man, this is awesome, man. The chat has just been crazy, just going through here, and I'm trying to keep up with the chat and listen to you guys. And at the same time,
did you guys talk about Brent Grimes?
I didn't really touch on Brent Grimes, but I want to get your thoughts on that.
He's a bitch. That's pretty much what he is.
Oh my God!
They can just go.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was I don't know. That was just such a weak move, man. I mean, he should have. I don't know.
He's acting like a child.
I didn't expect. And to be honest, I didn't expect that. That was the last thing that I would. He's pretty much said, "I'm taking my ball and going home." I didn't expect that from him. So I don't know. It kind of threw me off.
Well, I mean, I talked about it in my other podcasts. I mean, I think it was like I want to say when was it? It was probably I think it was against the Browns or I don't know. One of the games that was like middle of the season. And I was like, I told my friend Mark, I was like, Brent Grimes has quit. Like he's not playing this year. Like he's done. He's quit. And he should have been benched. Like, and that's another thing that this coaching staff failed at is not rewarding guys that did well, during the previous week. And then they would go back to, the original starter. Same, like Ryan Smith balled out against the Eagles, and then they don't even reward him by not even playing him. They didn't play him one snap on defense against Pittsburgh, which was just bogus. And they asked Brent Grimes to cover the best receiver in the game in Antonio Brown, and he didn't care. Like he didn't even try in that game. And the same thing just continued to happen all year.
Yeah. And I think we talked about that one missed tackle for a touchdown. Hey, what's going on? There's no effort in it. And when you know things like this now, it really it makes you really think about all that, those kind of like all those misses. And did he really try, or was that? Yeah, I don't know. It's just crazy.
I'm gonna say something, and I'm gonna probably get a lot of shit for it. I think if Brent Grimes would have been taken out early in the season, the Bucs would easily be in the playoffs. 100%. Brent Grimes single-handedly gave up almost 200 yards a game. If I went back and watched every single game that he played in and then tallied up every single yard that he let just blow right by him, it'd probably equal up to a couple thousand yards between the whole season. The Bucs would easily be an 8 to 10 win team if the defense was able to hold the last 2 minutes of the game. For whatever reason, the Bucs can't hold anybody the last 2 minutes of a half or the last 2 minutes of a game. For whatever weird reason. And I think that if we didn't give up, the 30-yarder in the Cowboy game and the touchdown in what game was it? Was that the Cowboy game and the Ravens game? We just get completely lost. If he was taken out of the game and you give guys like Devontae Harris and even Ryan Smith or Andrew Adams more chances on the field and more snaps, the Bucs would win more games. Yeah. But to have someone on the field that just simply didn't want to play because he wanted to bitch about getting paid the best on the team and not having to play like the best wide receiver on the team, on a team full of second-year players, which is to be expected. That's fine. They're growing and they're learning. But if you're the veteran player on that team, you need to expect to teach these guys. Yeah. And what are you teaching them by loafing around and not making tackles? That you can steal a check from a team? That you have no heart and no integrity and you probably shouldn't wear a uniform ever again? Sure. But it's sickening. It's really just sad. He's hurt his reputation more than anything.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't go that far as playoffs, but I understand what you're saying as far as more wins. I would probably say, definitely he was definitely a cancer in the locker room and out on the field as well. I mean, I think teams realized that they could just run at him, consistently, and that's what teams started to do. They just figured out this guy's not going to get off blocks. He's not going to engage. So, teams figured that out, and that's why you had all these, double reverses and stuff like that where they just run to his side. And, it's an easy, 9 to 10 yards and maybe more, if guys don't make the play. So, yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I'm happy he's going to be gone. I was one of the people that, thought it was a good move to bring him back.
I was too.
But, it just didn't work out, and whatever. I mean, good riddance.
Well,
I hope he gets put on a team that the Bucs play.
I want to say this.
Evans get like 200 yards.
I do want to say this. That defense collectively, with injuries, with coaching, and with scheme, that was just a perfect storm for them to be as bad as they were. Right. I understand what you guys are saying about Brent Grimes, but to me there was a lot more to that when you consider coaching with Mike Smith and his inability to be creative. The fact that he wouldn't make adjustments
for a lot of these things,
and he wouldn't make adjustments at halftime. There were close games that they should have won, but again, the defense was the liability the first half of the season, which is something that we saw last year. And we talked about it in the beginning of the season that the defense cannot be a liability in order to win games. And we saw a lot of the same stuff. So I think there's talent on the defense. I think the defense looked better with Brent Grimes not on the field when he was injured or whatever he was doing. And we saw that. So, again, when he played, he did have some good years here in Tampa where he did play. And then, just recently, I would say the end of last year going into this year, we just didn't see it. And, it is what it is. So you move on from him, and let's see if we can change the culture here and get something better going on, because there is a lot of talent on this team, and I see this team doing better than what we've seen.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the funny thing. Like, defensively was so bad in the first half of the season, and then the offense got worse as the season went on. And then special teams was just a disaster throughout most of the year. Mm-hmm. So it was just, you never got all three levels playing consistently or playing well together. And that was a big problem. I think they only had one game, and that was the San Fran game, where they all three levels played pretty well. Other than that, they didn't really have complete games, and it goes on coaching. That's why the coaching staff won't be here. That's why there's changes to be made, and they're on their way. And I think hopefully we make those right decisions and we get back on track.
Yeah. And to touch on the defense one last time, you can go all the way back to 2012 and see that inconsistency with the defense, where it didn't matter who the quarterback was, whether it was Glennon, whether it was Josh Freeman. I've seen games where Josh Freeman has gone out in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left and given this team the lead, regardless of how horrible or how inconsistent he played. He got this team the lead, and the defense couldn't hold the lead. That's just been consistently happening since going back that far, at least up to the present. And, it's something that's where that mindset, that's where the culture change needs to come from. And they really need a new direction. So I'm happy to have JPP here. I think that's a good start. And with a Vita Vea, a young person who can learn from him, I'm hoping that works out. And as well as the Brinson Buckner being here and what he's been able to teach some of these guys as well. So I think I really believe that they can get on that right track if that's the case.
Yep.
So I have a question for you two.
Okay.
How do you guys feel with Jameis coming back next year?
I'll go first. I'm glad he's back. Personally, I'm glad he's back. I think this is the first time that in Buccaneers history that they re-signed a drafted quarterback to come back in. I believe that's correct.
Well, he's not re-signed yet.
Yeah, not yet, Gene.
It's a fifth-year option.
Okay, fifth year option. Has a quarterback ever had a fifth-year option that was drafted?
Josh Freeman.
So. Josh Freeman did.
Really?
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, Freeman played 5 years, and then he was done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
of all quarterbacks,
scratch that. I was wrong on that part, but yeah, I am glad that Jameis Winston's back. I think you saw him taking care of the ball a lot more. He's more conscious of things going around. Hopefully they can get that offensive line fixed, and there won't be any excuses one way or the other. We can see what Jameis Winston can do when coached, and having time and having a running game.
Yeah, I'll say this. I listen to a lot of people around the league that talk football and talk about quarterbacks and Jameis in general, and a lot of people forget, like, the first 2 years that Jameis played, he had somewhat of a balanced attack where it was more designed to his strengths, which is play action, getting him outside of the pocket, using a short passing game with timing, utilizing deep passes when it was there. But for whatever reason, over the last 2 years, it's become just a completely different offense as far as passing numbers and really amping up the passing attempts, which has led to, the turnover issue, which, putting him in bad spots, offensive line issues as far as pass protection. So I think it's a great move to bring him back, and I think a lot of people have said with a better coaching staff around him, a staff that really cares about him having success and being put in the best spot. I think he'll do wonders. I think you can kind of see that, over the last half of the season, the numbers that he put up. I think he can be one hell of a player, and I think he'll continue to grow, especially being only 24 years old, now going on 25. The things that he's done so far in this league is outstanding, and I think he'll continue to get better with those things around him. I think he'll be that guy that we need him to be.
Yeah.
I think Jameis gets more of a bad rap than he deserves. He had a lot of issues with turnovers in the beginning of the season, but I did a comparison. His first half of the year stats, he had I think 1,100 yards, 10 interceptions, and 8 touchdowns. Right. And then over the last 9 games, he had I think 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. And 2 of those interceptions were off of Hail Marys at the end of the ball game. Mm-hmm. One was off a tip pass, and one was just an arrogantly thrown ball. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, bring Jameis back because there's no real draft depth in quarterback." But at the same time, you don't want to get rid of a guy who holds most of your franchise's team records at the age of 24. I mean, he's got a hell of an arm. He overthrows Deshaun Jackson. Not a lot of guys can do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, as bad as it was, he was able to overthrow him. And I think him losing weight in the offseason definitely helped him. He's a lot more agile. His footwork is great. Mm-hmm. He's made most of his touchdowns are from plays that should have been ended up in sacks. I think he needs a consistent O-line, and like you said, a run game. When Doug Martin was at his best, they were a 9 and 10 win team. You can't throw the ball 50 times a game and expect, to continuously score and continuously not get picked off. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, a lot of people just look at the stats, they look at the numbers, but not everyone looks at what this guy's being asked to do. Like, what are the players being asked to do is a big thing. Like, mm-hmm. if Jameis is consistently being put in 7-step drops, dropbacks where he's looking downfield for these routes to develop, but your offensive line can't block for more than 2 seconds. I mean, how is that guy supposed to have success when he's waiting on his routes to get open and he's already got, guys in his face? So he has to make something happen. And, it's just, that was the biggest thing. Like, I looked at this season, Jameis just couldn't function well enough in the offense, scheme-wise, as far as what he was being asked to do. And you just can't have that. You have to have success within your scheme that you're being called to do. And if you can't, then what do you really have? And you look at, our biggest plays this year, I bet most of them are when Jameis rolls out of the pocket and he's throwing downfield.
Yeah. So hopefully, I really hope some of that changes and they play to his strengths. Jameis rolling out of the pocket and, just finding an open receiver, running him as a running quarterback. A lot of people don't look at him that way, but he's hard to bring down. And you could see some of the hits that he took. I mean, I think some of the defensive guys took it a little bit worse than he did. But again, Jameis has a lot of very smart player, and I just want to see him utilized correctly and play to his strengths. And with the running game, I think that play action that Jameis has is pretty deadly. So I would love to see more of that. Maybe even more of the hurry up, not so much a hurry up, but like a sugar huddle.
No huddle offense.
Yeah. And, just rushing up to the line and making a play, just getting him in rhythm, that kind of thing. So I'd love to see him use a different way than what we've seen, because I don't think it really benefited him the way he was used.
Yeah. Jameis's biggest strengths are being able to call his plays at the line. He wants to get up there. He wants to see the defense for himself and then call a play. That's where he's been the most successful. You see it in the 2-minute offense. You see it in the hurry up. You see it in the no huddle. He controls that offense, and the offense clicks. He's trying to read it himself, and when he gets told to play and has to audible, it goes for a pretty big gain. It goes for a more successful play.
Yeah.
So. Absolutely. Well, if we get the coach that we all want, I think he'll have no problem of having success.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
No risk it, no biscuit. All right, guys. It's hard to believe it's been an hour already. I thank you guys so much for hanging with me. It's been 3 days of miserableness for me trying to figure out what's wrong with my computer. I got it working now. Ashley, thank you for coming on. You always have an open invitation. If you just get off work one day and decide you want to talk football and we're on, hit me up and I'll get you on, and we'll definitely get you back on here again as many times as you want. I appreciate you coming on. Plus, what do you got coming up next, man? I know you're getting ready to get back into writing, right?
I hope so. I'm trying to put a schedule together, but yeah, I mean, another podcast hitting tomorrow, probably early morning, at Real Bucs Talk on Twitter, iTunes, anything at Real Bucs Talk, you can find us. But yeah, I mean, I want to get back into writing, talking about the draft and talking about, what kind of direction this team's going to go. But I think, I really got to see who our next coach is going to be. Right. And then once we figure that out, really put a game plan together and put like maybe even put a draft board out and see, as far as rankings and stuff like that.
Ooh, a big board? One
last question here. One last question. The defensive coordinator from the Vikings interviewed with the Bucs. What are your thoughts on that? Was that you or Mark that was happy about that move?
Are you talking about George Edwards?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good interview. I think that's just doing due diligence. I don't think he's going to be the coach personally, but yeah, I mean, he's a smart guy, learned from Mike Zimmer. But I don't feel he's going to be the guy. Personally, I think it's going to come down to Chris Richard or the guy that we've all been talking about, Bruce Arians.
So do you think Eric Public Bieniemy #1, there's no chance for him coming in here? I've got a whole bunch of nicknames for him if he gets I got a bag full of them.
Personally, I wouldn't mind Bieniemy. I think he's a very smart football coach. He's actually made the Kansas City offense better. And a lot of his players that, play for him right now, they say it's much better than what Matt Nagy had for them the year prior. So, I mean, he knows details. Like, he demands perfection. And that's something that I think this team desperately needs. I mean, he's going to hold people accountable. I think he would be a good choice as well. But I think the favorites right now, if I had to guess, it'd be Bruce Arians or fallback would be Chris Richard.
Okay, there we go. Ashley, your thoughts? Who are your 2 coaches that you would like to see come into Tampa if one doesn't make it? Who's your next one?
Are we talking head coach or
head coaches
as well?
Head coach.
Oh, well, Bruce Arians is obviously #1. Chris Richard would be a great #2. I think his name is Vic Fangio. Fangio. I think he'd be a good option as well, but Bieniemy has definitely made that Chiefs offensive weapon what it is, a weapon. I mean, they have Tyreek Hill and they have, Pat Mahomes, who's incredible at the same time, but they don't get to be that incredible without coaching as well. So I think the Bucs have done a very good job of having their candidates, and they'll be good either way. But for my 1, 2, 3, it's Arians, Richard, and then Bieniemy.
All right, there we go. Yeah, well, you know me, man. I don't have a dog in the race. I don't really care, who the head coach is, to be very honest. So as long as the Bucs can get to the playoffs, I'm good with it. So let's see what happens. But that's pretty much it for us, guys. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Shout out to Clutch Sports, Marlon Williams, Tim 2902, Tommy Travis, of course. You're greatly appreciated for all your help. Slave 509, Demand, Marlon Williams, Garrett Jackson, Ron Allen. Let's see, am I missing anybody? Tay Harper, thank you so much.
Hey, my girl Tay.
Tay in the house. Victor Johnson. Again, guys. Live Without Fear has been in the chat, and you're greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Guys, if I missed your name, I'm sorry, but I'll try to catch you next time. Please, if you're following me on Twitter, just get at me, and I love talking football. So mostly and random tweets from time to time. Well, most of the time. And guys, I'm always here. I love to talk sports. If I get a good tweet, I'll definitely use that idea on the show. So just get with me. But anyway, that's pretty much it for us for tonight. Again, thank you, Ashley, and Pless, as usual, you are the GM. Thank you so much, bro. I appreciate you guys, and that's pretty much it for us for tonight. Thank you.